Celeste Brooks is a predictive astrologer and coach. Her offerings include classes, workshops, coaching packages, events, and readings. She also helps people find unknown birth times through chart rectification. Her podcast, Celestial Insights, offers weekly guidance. Her popular Instagram lives provide astrological and intuitive insights. Celeste is a board member of the Organization of Professional Astrology, OPA, and a faculty member at Kepler College. She lectures internationally at astrology conferences, and I really do like the OPA monthly transit talks that you provide, Celeste. It's such a wonderful opportunity for the community to learn from you. Before transitioning into astrology full-time, she had a successful sales and marketing career spanning over 25 years at Fortune 500 companies. She holds the STA's practitioner's level certification in horary, and her website is astrologybyceleste.com. You can check her out on Instagram, Threads, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Astrology by Celeste, and she's on LinkedIn at Celeste Brooks. Welcome, Celeste. Look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Mary and Lori. It's so wonderful to be here. Thank you for the Transit Talk shout out. For anyone who doesn't know, the Organization of Professional Astrology, every first Sunday, I host a study group, the Transit Talk. You have to be a member, and I highly recommend being a member of OPA. Okay. So I hope you enjoy this presentation on world points. It's so funny. I was giving an OPA presentation about the change of the nodes last fall into the North Node into Pisces and the South Node into Virgo. And I'm known for my tangents where this brain with two mutable placements just goes on a starts like just dropping things in, and I happened to mention the world points, and people were so interested in wanting to learn more about the world points that Lori said, let's do this workshop. So I hope you enjoy this webinar about world points, and it gives you information that helps you with your own chart, your clients' charts, understanding. I love mundane astrology, so understanding what new moons or eclipses and whatnot are likely to have more impact on a more global scale, and yeah, anything else for you. And I'm calling them, I like to call them degrees of significance. And so there are many zodiac degrees that we look at that are important ones. Sometimes we're looking at things like fixed stars or other things, but world points are one of the most helpful tools. I learned about them from Anne Ortley, excuse me, one of my mentors, and they really will add to your practice. I've already been introduced, but I always like to start with a quote. More visibility is more power, but it's also more vulnerability. And that's Ezra Furman who made that quote. And these are supposed to be the fates. And so this brings in the topic of your fate and fortune and what's the difference between, free will and whatnot. So this, when we're talking about things like world points, it can bring in a whole level of philosophical conversation. But there's zodiac degrees of significance that suggest the quality of importance, that something meaningful or noteworthy is going on. I highly recommend keeping a very tight orb, 1 to 1.5 degrees, when you're looking at either natal or mundane events. And they can indicate, now, just because you have a planet at a world point doesn't mean you're going to be world famous, whatever, but they can indicate that a person may be noteworthy. Like, for instance, you could have, let's say, 0 Cancer. You have something at 0 Cancer in the 4th house, let's say Venus. It could be like you're known in your family for making the best Thanksgiving desserts or something. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a global superstar, but there's something about it that's noteworthy of global, potentially, or collective influence. about the person or an event. And when I'm looking at charts, especially in mundane astrology, they can be a blinking light. When I see a world point, it jumps out at me, especially eclipses, retrograde stations, ingress charts, and outer planet hard aspects, because that's like, ooh, what is about this is going to have more significance. So I've done a lot of research about trying to figure out where this system came from, and we'll get into more, but I'm trying to just help you as much as I can, because there's not a book on world points or something like that that I could point to. But let's start with talking about and how we can see these visually of how they came to be in some ways. At least for me, wrapping my head around this was really helpful. And I'm going to give a shout out to Heidi D. I'm going to call you Heidi D. I didn't see you in the chat, Heidi, but hopefully you're here. On the next slide, you'll see how to spell her last name. I don't want to butcher it, but she was so helpful in outlining this in a more understandable format for one of the OPA transit talks. She gave an overview for all of us. So I want to thank her specifically. So the 90-degree dial. And what the 90-degree dial is, probably most of you know this already, but just a quick review. It's like a condensed version of the 360-degree zodiac wheel, where we're focusing on the cardinal, mutable, and fixed crosses. It's used mostly by, my introduction to it came through Michael Bryant of Oraculus. So Uranian astrologers, but also cosmobiologists use this. And it's a tool to help your eyes easily see hard aspects and midpoints, which can be used for natal analysis or predicting, especially concrete events or what may be coming. So the degrees there are the hard aspects, 0 to 45, 90, 135, and 180. And when we look at this wheel, the dial, we're going to see 0 to 30 degrees is cardinal signs, 30 to 60 is fixed signs, 60 to 90 is mutable signs. And I will say I use Placidus primarily as my house system. For horror, I use Regiomontanus. And sometimes for like perfections and things, I use whole sign, but pretty much I use Placidus. I love the hearts. Thank you. So thank you to Heidi D. Thank you, thank you. So we know we have the zodiac, the wheel of the zodiac, 360 degrees, the animals, the constellations around the ecliptic. Now, when you cut this into the three parts of three equal divisions of this circle for the 90-degree dial, what you have is on the dial, you will have 0 to 30, which will be on this left-hand side, will be all of the cardinal points. Between 30 and 60 will be all of the fixed signs, and 60 to 90 will be all of the mutable signs. So you see this here, cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And I love it because sometimes, when you're first starting and looking at the wheel, sometimes it can be hard to see the squares and the oppositions and when the trines and all of that stuff with your eye. And one of my teachers, Rebecca Gordon, was like, read the chart in the sky. Stop looking at that grid, that helps you. So one of the best ways to do this, I found, and another one of my teachers, Deborah Silverman, was really helpful with this, is knowing that the modes are so important. They are as important as the elements, with all the signs. Knowing what modes they're in can just immediately click that relationship for you in your head. So if you're an earlier or newer astrology student, make sure you know those modes too. It would be my recommendation. Yeah. So anyway, the world points are 0 and 22.5 degrees of the cardinal signs, 15 degrees of the fixed signs, and 7.5 degrees of the mutable signs. So these are the world points, and you can see them easily on the dial, where the dial kind of, what I think of it as, it folds the zodiac in on itself and into these parts. And you can see when you look at a chart as a dial format rather than a wheel format, the world points jump out because it puts the 0 degrees points will be right around here of the cardinal signs. 22.5 degrees will be on the 9 a.m. The fixed cardinal points will be at, the midnight of the chart. And the 7.5 degree of the mutable signs will show up right on the western part of the chart, or it shouldn't say western, whatever. You know you see what I'm pointing at, the right hand side. So it's like a cardinal cross here. It looks like a cross, and the world points are at each of what would be like an angle on a natal chart. So I hope that makes sense. So for an example, I use SolarFire. I love the SolarFire software. And this is the solar eclipse for 9 Aries that's coming up soon here. It's going to be a wowza for an important one. I think people are going to, Mary and I were talking about this right before. So I think, yeah, this is going to be where we arise from our slumber in some ways. And so you see, this is a traditional chart in Placidus of the eclipse. And then when you look at it at the dial, see how you can easily see the world points. Neptune is at 29 degrees of Pisces. So that's a world point because for the cardinal signs, 0 Aries, so we would look at 29 of the mutable signs, 0 of the cardinal signs, and 1 degree of the cardinal signs as the world point. That gives us, the 1 to 1.5 degrees on either side. So we see Neptune's on a world point. Mercury's separating from Neptune, carrying Neptunian confusion, delusion, and whatnot into the fire sign of Aries. Put in the chat what you think that could mean. What comes to my mind right away is an action taken without having all of the information that could be causing some kind of conflict is possible. That will be recognized by, it will have influence. Yeah, it will have recognition. It will be somewhat prominent, that you'll be reading about it in the newspaper. This is what world points also suggest. You can think about it simply as you may be reading about something of the nature of the planet, the sign, and if you look at the house on what you're going to be reading in the newspaper. So we see Neptune and Mercury set in the United States are in the 12th house of secrets. So something is going to be seated at this eclipse that we may not realize for a bit, or it just like on that day, it's like surprise, surprise, or right around that day. Yeah, so that. And then we see, look at here, we see Mars and Chiron are at 22.5 degrees of the cardinal signs, meaning we know Cancer and Aries are signs that square each other. Squares are tense, things pop out into the real world. A concrete event is more likely to happen. And we see, oh, here's Mars in the 4th house, but ooh, it's within 5 degrees, the 5-degree rule of the 5th house. Squaring Chiron in the 1st angular house. So the people are going to be aware of something in the nature of a martial thing. And Cancer makes me think about, is something going to be happening on the water? That's something related to, yeah, something about water or fire. Mars rules fire. That is going to impact people. There's going to be an event that we're going to recognize something happening of this nature. Hopefully it's not just another fire. But we'll see what happens. Anyway, I don't want to get too caught up in that, but hopefully that was helpful. And I thought I thought I wrote down all the signs. Okay, just in case someone is not aware. Oh yeah, I did. Here they are. Here are the cardinal signs: Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. The fixed signs: Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, and mutable Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. If anyone doesn't know, that's something you should be aware of. And what's the relationship between each of those signs, because they're all hard aspects. Okay. Hopefully that's not too basic, but I know we have a mixed audience. Okay. And let me just show you on Solar Fire how you can look at this. So let's use Dolly Parton. I love Dolly Parton. She's so wonderful. And so this is her chart. And if you have Solar Fire open, you open the chart and then you go over here where it says wheel and you change it to dial. And that brings you up with the dial that shows you the hard aspects, okay, and the world point. So, oh, she does actually have world point, but it's just the nodes, so I didn't put her in the presentation. But anyway, and then you can kind of use this to pull around to see midpoints and all sorts of things. Okay. But anyway, and then under dial style, I like this dial 90T, but they're different ones. So you can pick what dial with dial style you want. I like the 90-degree dial. They're different ones. I'm not a Uranian astrologer, but I pick and choose what I like, and I like the dial sometimes to be looking at things. Okay. So before I go on, are there any questions that I should address? Okay.
I think we're good so far.
Okay,
We'll
good.
wait.
Okay, so let's talk about the cardinal degrees. So 0 degrees, this is the most famous. 0 degrees of all of the cardinal signs is called the Aries point. And these degrees mark the seasons. We celebrate the solstices and the equinoxes. Those are the holidays that are related to the seasonal ingresses. Cardinal signs are initiating energy. People can be pioneers, leaders, action-oriented. So if you see a cardinal degree in someone's chart, especially if it is in a house, like if it's a planet in a house that's angular or rules one of the angular houses of the 1st, 4th, 7th, or 10th house, I definitely would stop and talk to the client about the symbology of the planet and the house and the sign. And you may find that there's something related to their life that they've gotten attention for, and it can be positive or negative attention, but there is something. And if they're like struggling to find a career purpose or something like that, and it's their midheaven or their ascendant, I mean, maybe there's something that in there that can spur some interest in them about a course of how they want to take action that you can come through by talking through this. Because, sometimes our talents are in our blind spots, and we think the things we're good at are just like, sometimes we think everyone's good at that. No, this could be something that's a talent that you have that you could use to have a career, have a hobby, like whatever. something about related to your calling that you want to invest some time in nurturing. So the cardinal signs, especially the 0, it suggests increased visibility. There's a potential for widespread public recognition and prominence of the person or the event, for better or for worse. The 22.5 degree is the 8th harmonic, and it's like that 45 degrees cut in half. And so an example, now we're going to do a few examples of cardinal world points charts and how they showed up. So when an event happens, like a big event, you can look at just the chart of the event. But if you are taking my transits class or have taken it, you know, in our own lives or world events or anything, we go back, any event in our life. Oh, when I broke up with Pierre and then fell down the stairs or whatever. You could go back, but I don't remember the date I broke up with Pierre. You can go back. How funny with Valentine's Day being yesterday. Uh, anyway, you go back and look at the solar eclipse that preceded the event, and you will find the story there when you put the solar eclipse around your natal chart. So before 9/11 and the 2020 election, we had solar eclipses at 0 Cancer before both of those events. And this is part of a cycle called the, not this, the Saros, not the Saros. Why can't I think of the name of it? Oh, Lord. There are 2 cycles of eclipses. And this is the one where you have an eclipse at the same degree, approximately every 19 years. Okay. So anyway, that is so embarrassing. I can't believe I forgot the name of those. I'll figure it out before we're done. Okay. Anyway, here is the United States Sibley Chart. And the United States has several things on world points, including the midheaven is at 1 degree of Libra and the IC at 1 degree of Aries. And I always love to talk about how we speak our chart. And go west, young man is one of the things, you know, a famous American phrase. And go west, young man, and, you know, stake out your homestead or whatever. And we have 1 Aries, a world point at the IC of the country. Okay. So anyway, Venus in Cancer is the planet that rules the midheaven of the United States chart. So, which is good to know, but 0 degrees Cancer eclipses essentially eclipse the planet that rules the midheaven of the United States chart and activates the IC and the MC by square. So, there's going to be a story for the United States when there's an eclipse at 0 Cancer. And Cancer is in a sign that's quincunx to our ascendant in Sagittarius. Sagittarius and Cancer are signs that quincunx each other. And quincunxes are health aspects in general. So, what can you think about that? So at 9/11, there was, you know, the attack. And in the 2020 election was the first time the loser did not concede the election, and we all know what happened since then. So that's an example for an eclipse. The Saturn-Pluto conjunction of 2020, where Saturn and Pluto and the Sun met on a world point of 22.5 of cardinal signs. So we all knew that something significant was going to be coming from this Saturn-Pluto conjunction. But what was it going to be? Was the question. I mean, some people had predicted a pandemic, but anyway, Saturn and Pluto meet every 34 years approximately and are symbolic of war and pestilence. They met in Leo. We had polio, which is back in our conversation because of, yeah, health and human services issues. In the 80s, they met in the sign of Libra, and we had the AIDS epidemic. And here they met in the sign of Capricorn, and we had this breakdown of Capricornian themes. Governments, big business, and the elderly were most impacted by this respiratory disease. Also, Harry and Meghan left the crown. So Queen Elizabeth, who is a sun type figure and a Capricorn rising, and her rising sign is right around here. Oh, I could have added her. Apologies. There are not more women. It should have been more balanced with more women in here, but anyway, it is what it is. Okay. So anyway, she really, this eclipse, this Saturn-Pluto conjunction really had some big changes to the monarchy when Harry abdicate or whatever you call what he did. The moon, we haven't gotten to well, we have gotten to it yet. The moon, meaning the people in mundane astrology, the moon is the people, is at 15 degrees of Leo. So this suggests that people are going to be impacted in this with this conjunction. And Leo is a sign of personal expression, has to do with, letting our lights shine, our ability to have recreation and personal enjoyment and fun. And you see the moon is quincunx, an angular Neptune. When planets are in the angular houses, they have more impact. The angular houses are the seats of power. So moon, quincunx, Neptune. The people are literally having a weakness in some way. So what we saw was it was this health aspect. Masses of people got sick. And also, like in the United States, there was rules where you had to be vaccinated. And this caused a huge conflict between people and their wanting to be able to, my body, my choice, and the government, Capricorn, Saturn and Capricorn, and saying you have to take this if you want to work at this job or go to this restaurant or blah, 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 blah. So that was a big thing in the US. Okay. And then we had later that year the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at 0 degrees of Aquarius. Oh, and at the end, I'm going to talk about the asteroid that could be coming to Earth in 2032. So pay attention to this slide about the fact that Jupiter and Saturn met at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And Jupiter and Saturn are the social planets. And they meet every 20 years, starting a new cycle about how people are relating. And this was such an important one because it was the first time in 200 years they met in air. For 200 years before, they met in Earth, except for a blip where they met in Libra, an air sign. They've been in earth signs, but then they moved to the air, and we know what's come. Pluto goes into Aquarius and AI is here. Yeah, so we know. So it's a sign, Aquarius is a sign of the collective, meaning masses of people as a whole, technology, the future, airships. Okay, and so at this point, there was the COVID vaccine. And you can see here Mars at 23 Aries. This is on the world point of 22.5 cardinal signs, Aries, squaring Pluto at 23, and it's an applying square. So there's this conflict between people wanting to take their own actions and the government asserting its power that you have to, and the government is angular and the people are in the 12th house, which suggests a cadent house, suggests a lack of power because it's like the power is falling away. So that was a big story of these vaccines. But the goal was to stop death from this airborne disease and minimize the, because I know several people who are still struggling who got COVID back in 2020 with long COVID symptoms. Yeah. Yeah. But I don't want to. I don't want to step on a minefield. This is not intended to talk about vaccines, right or wrong, or anything like that. It's just the astrology. Okay. So I shouldn't have brought that up about some people struggling still. Okay. Venus is quincunx Uranus too. Here. Venus on a world point of 7.5 mutable signs is quincunx Uranus in Taurus. So like some kind of, we're talking again about like a break in, the goal was to, stop death and allow people to get back to life and enjoyment. Okay. So another example, this is a person, Britney Spears. Now, the nodes, many people have nodes at the same degree, but it's really interesting in her personal story, and we know her personal story, where she's got her south node in Capricorn, her north node in Cancer. They're both angular, and they're world points, and they square for her Saturn and Pluto in Libra. And very famously, she had that legal fight with her father for control of her money, and she won. So Venus, South Node, and Capricorn in the 4th house. Astrology is so literal. Her father took control of her money because of his concerns about her mental fitness, and yeah, and wanted to keep that gravy train running. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yeah. And another thing about fame for people in the United States, you often see people with strong Cancer energy to become to prominence because the United States is a Cancer sun and has a stellium in Cancer. So see, the United States has 1, 2, 3, 4 planets in Cancer. And this Mercury at 24 Cancer, that's, our 8th house. And she has her North Node in the 10th house on the Mercury of the United States. And she is beloved by so many people, and so many people want to protect her because they see her as someone who's been really taken advantage of from the time she was a young child. Okay. So talented. Yeah. And this was one that just jumped out at me that I thought was a great example. So in LA, we have had these horrific fires, and this huge fire was not the original ones in the Pacific Palisades and Altadena. This is one that started after the nodes had switched. And it like came out of nowhere. It was fueled by the strong Santa Ana winds. And you see Pluto and the sun in the 10th house. But like by the end of it was just another shock to the system with 10,000 acres burned, and like people having to run from their homes. And there was we saw visions of, or images of, a freeway on fire, and you have Mercury opposite Mars squaring the ascendant at the time it started, all on world points. And so it made a chart pattern, so a world point T-square. So if you saw someone with a chart that had all these world points, this would be something where you could really focus in your reading about for them. Now, if it was a person, we'd be talking about, you know, their whatever, trying to keep their father or family like their primal need for success being related to what they were, how they were taught as a child and how they were pushed and prodded in order to achieve something because they got to prove something to dad or whatever. I used the dad for the fourth house and mom for the 10th house or something like that. So you could have a big story about, ooh, real big talk about this for the person, especially since Mars is retrograde. It could be a real breakthrough. Okay. But anyway, yeah, so this is that world point T-square. Yeah. And at the time, the nodes were on 29. Yeah. And so 29 is a degree of crisis and decay, and then we move into 0, and there's some new start as well we can think about with that. Another one. So for people, the Celestial Insights podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, all the things. And every week I talk about what's coming up for the astrology. And the week before this, one of the things that really caught my eye was Mars retrograde on a world point of 22.5 Cancer. And we know Mars is retrograde, but it's also in the sign of its fall, where it can act in extreme and ineffective ways. And out of bounds, out of the declination of the sun, where it doesn't have that calming influence of the sun, where people, I mean, hello, the US, um, all of this, all of this is happening with Mars retrograde in Cancer, and outside of the declination, fall, and retrograde and affliction as well, which suggests delays, restrictions, and the collapse of anything contemplated, and conflicts. So, a lot of things just for people, every word that helps me calm down at this time of, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things that are said that are coming, said and initiated under Mars retrograde will never likely happen. I think is something that's important for us to remember, especially with the North Node conjunct Neptune, to not let ourselves get too crazily worried about things. Well, as much as we can. Yeah. So anyway, that are initiated now under this Mars retrograde time. So I was so interested to see how this was going to show up because Venus is exalted in the sign of Pisces and Mars is in fall. And in my podcast, I was talking about the image of Venus exalted is like Venus on a pedestal and into a well, on a pedestal into a well, trying to remove all restrictions. And these thieves blew off the door of the museum and then stole this ancient helmet and 3 wristbands. So Venus and Pisces, this beautiful art, the very valuable, exalted pieces of art. And then these lowlifes blow the door off, these Mars retrograde in Cancer, and steal these precious artifacts. And they also blew up a car as well as a diversionary with this Mercury's trine Uranus. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So I predicted they were going to get caught, which they did. They were caught on January 31st, but they did not recover the goods. They did not recover this helmet and wristbands. And there's concern that they might have sold it for just melting it down because the amount of gold would be worth something like 90,000 euros or dollars. I can't remember which currency. But And that really, like, okay, you steal this valuable piece of art. I mean, and then maybe somebody just wanted it for their house and they paid them, but you can also see images of them taking the gold and melting it down with this transit. So it'll be interesting to know if we find out what they did with it. And if anybody finds out, let me know if you're in the Netherlands. If you hear about what they did with that. Yeah. So I'll pause there. Any questions? No. Okay, good.
Yeah, Mark, well, we
Oh,
have a couple. If you
oh,
mind,
good.
sure. Mark Willis was asking about 30 degrees and is it supposed to be 120 degrees in terms of maths? I think it's just because 120 is divisible by 30. That's why we
Oh, I see what, yeah. I think, are you talking about?
the dials back at the beginning and how you compute
Oh,
that.
well, you fold it in on itself. So if you look at, let me see. Let me look at so if you look at the chart, see you fold all of those. So in this 0 to 30 degrees of this dial, it's not the wheel of the zodiac, it's this dial. It has all 120 degrees of the cardinal signs, but they're all, see how you see Cancer, Aries. If there was 22 and a half of Capricorn or Libra, they would be here as well. So it has all of the degrees kind of folded in on itself. So the dial looks like 0 to 30, and then 30 to
Mhm.
60, and 60 to 90. Now, there are different ways to look at a dial as well. So maybe you've seen dials with more. Do you think that answers the question, Mary?
I think so. I think so. It's just this is an introduction to sort of the idea of the symmetry of the quadruplicities.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
And Astara asked, do you put a physical dial on an actual chart? I think you demonstrated with solar fire how you do it, but
Yes.
I have heard, Astara, that people do that. You can put it to make it as a way to conceptualize this concept.
Well, this is how you can easily see with your eye midpoints with these dials. And yeah, because midpoints are important. Like if you have a midpoint on a world point, that can be important as well. So like this shows you, like, see, you can use this to show you midpoints as well. Or with as well as seeing, like we see with Dolly, she has all this stuff on the world points. And if we go back to wheel, and if we go to reports, you can also go with solar fire to go to the midpoint listing is another way to see if someone has a midpoint on a world point, that could be interesting as well. So you can do that as well. Look at them this way. And this midpoint listing and solar fire will show you that. So what I recommend is you can try all the tools and see what works for you and what really um helps enhance your readings, and yeah, and then use it that way. So hopefully that's helpful. Like I'm not a Uranian astrologer, but I find this dial to be really helpful, especially when before I could just see with my eyes the squares and the oppositions and the trines without the grid. It was a way, the dial was a bridge for me from the wheel and the grid. And by the grid, in case anyone doesn't know what I'm saying, you can go in solar fire and go to current chart and a grid. This grid is what I'm talking about. That gives you a visual way to see the aspects.
Mhm. Great, thank you. And we
You're
have a
welcome.
question about orbs. Do you use 5-degree orb on either side or two and a
This
half on
is the
either side?
1 to 1.5 degree max. This with these world points, the tighter the better.
And I think someone asked in the chat a good question. if you were to summarize world points, are they more impactful on a collective level? Is that sort of the idea rather than a personal experience? When you see world points hit, are they
If it's in
resonating
your
more?
natal chart, I think it's more impactful to the personal experience if, okay, I'll use my chart as an example. I have Venus at 7.5 degrees of Gemini in my 11th house. And I've always been social, always had a lot of friends. I mean, I'm not a famous person, but I'm well known in astrology and I'm well known for my lives and like the information I share. And hopefully, I think I'm well known for the jokes I crack. But anyway, yeah, you see, that's an example of a person that has it's on my life level that, yeah, I can make friends wherever I go.
I see that. I like that intersection of the personal with the collective there. Thank you for that example.
Yes, but I have, so that's a gift, but then I have Venus and Mars squaring my nodes. So imagine my love life has been interesting. Currently very good, but trials and tribulations. Are there any more, Mary?
Nope, we're good for now.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. I love questions. Okay. So next up is 15 degrees of the fixed signs. And fixed signs suggest staying power, resilience, focus, determination, and persistence. And they are in the middle of the seasons. And 15 degrees is like smack in the middle. So 0 has like the beginning energy, 29 is crisis to decay, and by 15, it's like a culmination if you make, what do you call that, the graph? Yeah, you make the graph. It's like a peak energy. And esoteric astrologers consider these degrees the avatar degree, with a connection to destiny, mastery, and divine purpose. I'm not an esoteric astrologer, but that's what I understand according to the Google. Anyway, mhm. And we celebrate these with with they're always around the first of the degree of like May, 1st of May, 1st of August, da 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 da. Cross quarter days are what they're called. And Imbolc, Beltane, Lammas, and Samhain are, I hope I said them right, are holidays that are associated with these degrees. So they have a global significance in that, and different cultures around the world celebrate these degrees in different ways. Like in the United States, May Day has to do with workers and workers' rights. Okay. So Christian Dior is someone with 15 degrees of Leo on his midheaven, on a world point, and he has Jupiter in Aries on a world point of 22 and a half. Now he also has zero degrees. So 0 degrees of any sign, 29 degrees of any sign. When you see that in a chart, it jumps out. A lot of famous people have 0 or 29 degrees, suggesting they're either like initiators of some kind of energy, or ooh, they've got every ounce of it and really hold the energy. So he's someone you can look at this chart and be like, world point, 0, 0. This person may be well known for something. Yeah. And this could be a conversation piece. Yeah. Especially like if it was a kid just getting ready to go to college or something, you may want to talk to and feel out this, especially because they're a Scorpio rising And they got this Leo midheaven. There's something in your life. You're meant to move out of this maybe desire to keep yourself hidden, or because like there can be feelings of exposure, but you're here to shine that light in some way. Okay, so anyway, he's a fashion designer and he was legendary for his influence. And a leader. Leos is such a leadership sign. Many famous designers came out of the house of Dior, and his style was cutting edge. Look at this, Mars and Scorpio. Mars cuts, cutting edge. And the new look was one of his collections, I guess, revolutionized women's fashion after World War II. So women's fashion, or fashion in general, he has Venus and Pisces, King Kunks is midheaven, which this is a suggestion of, ooh, is this person really creative? He's got Venus exalted. Now, I guess they also could be married to someone who's really creative in some way. It could have been like a famous designer's wife or husband, but he's the famous designer with that Scorpio rising anyway, someone out on a mission. And Jupiter and Aries. So it's like he got Jupiter is a sign that, I mean, Jupiter is a planet that has to do with celebrity or being well known or success. And it's in Aries, a sign of war, World War II, and it's pioneering. He's a pioneer in so many different ways. Yeah, and he's got his chart ruler right on his ascendant. Yeah, and this Uranus, it's a little past the world point, but it's 1 degree, so that jumps out at me as well. Super Bowl halftime show. We just had that Super Bowl halftime show from Kendrick Lamar. Loved it. Uranus at 15 degrees of Taurus on a world point in the 10th house. So it's got staying power. People are still talking about it, still watching it a week later. I mean, people are going to write theses and dissertations, and apparently some people like on threads who had broken it down had talked about, a couple of them, about how college professors were reaching out to them to say, can I use this in my class to talk about some of the significance of what he was saying in his performance. It was the most watched halftime show ever, and it dethroned Michael Jackson. So this is Mars retrograde. We're talking about Michael Jackson in the past, this action in the past. And I saw a little thing on Instagram, a little reel about Michael Jackson, like he was all in control, and he stood out on the stage. I didn't remember this, and he paused for, like, I think they said 2 minutes. Was it 2 minutes? It was like a really, really long time before he did something with his glove, like he was going to do something with his hand to signify the show was about to start. So he was just standing there for a long, long time. And that's like Mars retrograde. The action didn't start, and his producer was so nervous because he's just standing there, and the crowd's cheering. But he had the ability to hold that attention. See, this is a tangent that I need to end. Okay, but anyway, Taurus has associations with fashion. And he wore bell-bottom jeans that are normally associated with women, but they're also, one of the things I learned I didn't know from this whole thing was that they're a sign of resistance. And from the 60s, something like they look like a Liberty Bell kind of at the bottom. Now, they originally came out of war. They were something designed related to war. So Venus and Aries, yes, they were. And they've reignited a fashion trend, people going out and buying it. Now, some people complained the show was boring. They didn't understand it. Taurus can be a sign that suggests, it can be accused of being boring. I'm a Taurus. I don't consider myself boring, but anyway, actually I am. I eat the same thing for breakfast. But anyway, that's not important. The performance was investigated, dissected by internet sleuths around the world. You see this 15 degrees of Scorpio down here. There's all sorts of forensic, every frame, every piece of clothing, all of that. Okay. Andy Warhol, his ascendant, 14 Leo, is on the world point of 15 Leo, and his sun is right there, which rules his chart ruler right on his ascendant. And 15 degrees of Leo, I like astrology so literal. Leo's associated with fame, and he coined the term 15 minutes of fame. Everyone will have 15 minutes of fame in their lifetime. Yeah. And he was the leader of a pop art movement. Leo's very creative, and he was known for his bold, colorful depictions of consumer culture, celebrity, and mass production. And this Campbell soup can, his midheaven is Taurus, and the soup can is one of the most famous things. His picture, Venus and Leo of the soup can, was one of the most famous things. Oh, I missed, and oh, his North Node is at 7.5 Gemini. He was really known for his quippy things he said. So mutable signs are signs of transition and change. They're expressive and changeable. They're curious. And they're the midpoints between the cross-quarter days and the solstice equinoxes. Now, they're not official holidays, but there are many holidays that are associated with these mutable world points, like Lent Carnival fall around them in the spring, Midsummer in the summer, the Jewish High Holy Days, Day of Atonement, Mabon in the fall, and Saturnalia Advent in the winter. In the Northern Hemisphere. And they can be the chameleons and the shapeshifters of the zodiac. The mutable signs are ruled by Mercury and Jupiter. So like people who are like great communicators or like big picture thinkers or philosophers. So here we go with Kendrick Lamar. Oh my God. Now, he's not like looking at this chart, you would, well, I guess it's that Mars and Cancer. That, you wouldn't want to cross this man. Talk about holding a grudge. I loved how petty it was and how he had Drake's ex-girlfriends on the stage. I mean, Serena Williams and SZA used to date Drake, and it was so good. But he's an artist, a poet, and a philosopher. So his ascendant is conjunct the fixed star Spica, which is at 24 Libra. It's one of those famous fixed stars, and it denotes success. It's one definitely to put in your toolbox. It's the royal fixed stars, Spica and Algol and Sirius are fixed stars that are good to be aware of. Yeah. And his chart ruler, so he's got this advantage. People with planets or placements near Spica are often successful, and it can be in any field. Yeah. And his ascendant and his chart ruler is on a world point at 7.5 Gemini, and he's an artist. And he's got Jupiter and Aries on a world point on the descendant. So to me, this says when he sees an opponent, he assumes they're coming at him with a bazooka, and he is ready for them with every weapon in his toolbox. Anyway, I'm digressing, but anyway, it was the most watched show ever. But he's got all this Gemini and Sagittarius, so he's so philosophical. He's got this moon in Pisces. He's a poet, and Gemini like is the rap energy too. Like I feel like Gemini is like Mars and Gemini, but he was in his Mars return during the show right about then. And Drake really is not like us, and he's got Mars in Aquarius. What? Mars in apologies. Oh yeah, Mars in Aquarius rules his IC, and the IC is the most personal point. And oh, with the South Node in Libra, you know it really bothers him, all of this stuff. But he sued everybody but Kendrick. If you've been paying attention to this, he said they were artificially making this song famous. And it's like, no, the big aspect of last year was Jupiter in Gemini square Saturn and Pisces. So Jupiter in Gemini suggests duality, and Saturn and Pisces, like a rejection, like not like us. This and that are not, we're this, you're that, not like us. It was it was in the energy, and the song just took off. Yeah. And Aquarius suggests some kind of exile kind of thing. So maybe there's, he's speaking his chart. He's speaking the truth about his chart in some way. But Drake had a concert, and he wore after the Super Bowl show, and he wore like a hoodie with bullet holes in it and smoke coming out the back. So what that was, where's the super? We had a lyrical assassination at the Super Bowl where we had Mercury Cazimi square Uranus, is how I described it. Okay, anyway, let's not get too distracted with that. But that is, and he's got his midheaven at 23 degrees of Taurus. 26 Taurus is Algol, one of the most feared fixed stars, and it's really in our collective attention right now because of Uranus being there. And it's associated with the Medusa mythology and Lilith mythology. But Medusa mythology, it's the beheading star. She was beheaded by Perseus, and he used her head as a weapon. Anyway, yeah, and Uranus stationed to go direct at 23 on his midheaven conjunct Algol. With Algol, I would use with the fixed stars, I use 3 to 4 degrees. Sometimes you use this too, but with this, I definitely use a little wider. And he had this public beheading about this song. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me see. Okay. Are there any questions before I go on to the asteroid? So trigger warning for anybody who this is too much for.
Sure, we have some questions.
Oh, good.
Trudy wants to discuss, she asked what you think about Saturn conjunct Neptune at 0 degrees Aries. That's definitely on everyone's minds, I think.
So, well, one of the things I had said about that Saturn Neptune, because it really impacts the USA chart, and yeah, it's going to be something. It's going to be something, but we're revving up to all of it. But what I see it as, let's look at the US chart. And it's happening February, I think it's February 26th of 2026 is when it's exact. Oh, it must be. Here we go. Here it is, February 20th, excuse me. Well, we already are seeing it coming to light. The current leader of the United States is essentially making enemies of the whole world So it's like as Neptune crosses our IC and it comes down here, it's like the whole world is disillusioned, and it didn't I mean right now by the United States in some way, especially Canada is so furious. Like they were just minding their own business and got attacked. They've been our friend for hundreds of years and got attacked. So they're very disillusioned, and Saturn rejects and excludes. And people already are rejecting and excluding the United States, like boycotting United States products, not coming to visit, da 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 da. Maybe this is when it comes to the conscious awareness of the country that, ooh, we've really made enemies of our friends. Maybe there's a problem on the water, fighting on the seas, like a conflict that gets a lot of attention. Now, this could also be a bad fire because it's for the US anyway, because yeah, it's on the IC is the land. Maybe this is a fight back. Maybe the army, people in the military, like say, TV host, no, we're not going to go attack our neighbors. And because tech companies want their minerals and put their weapons down and walk away, that could be at the military says, see you later. Or some places do a draft. Yeah, that could be drafts in certain places around the world that are like, okay, well, we can't rely on the United States anymore. Let's have a draft. These are some of the things that came to me, but it's a degree of initiation. And we are going to be seeing more of the hero archetype rise and mythological people who are fighting against the power. We had Luigi who killed that healthcare CEO who's been kind of exalted in the collective. His trial, maybe he gets his verdict or something. There's also, or somebody else like him. Yeah, there's going to be lots of events of prominence of this Saturn-Neptune conjunction. If people have other thoughts, put them in the chat. Yeah, this is a big deal, these two meeting on a world point of zero Aries, initiating, starting energy. After the crisis and the decay comes the exciting new start, and it's going to be in sextile to Uranus at the beginning of Gemini, and we know Pluto in Aquarius. So actually, Maurice Fernandez is talking about that grand sextile at the next speaker series for OPA. So it can be very exciting. And I am hopeful. Yes, we've got to go through this breakdown and crisis, and it's not comfortable, and we're never going to be the same. And oh, it's a really shock to the system. But my mantra this year is my faith is stronger than my fear, and we're going to go through some hard times, but I'm going to hold on to the hope, trust, and faith that a better future is coming after we get through this tough time.
Thank you. Hear, hear. People are asking about using points with world points, like angles and anything other
Yes,
than planets. And you did demonstrate
absolutely.
that, I think, with Drake's chart that used his
Yeah, that was
midheaven as well.
Drake was one. Yeah, absolutely. Like we saw. Oh, I love it. Okay, I am going to get myself into a little trouble probably. But Drake and the current president of the United States have a 29-degree Leo rising, and that is conjunct the fixed star Regulus, um, one of the most greatest, that gives the most honors fixed star. It's a royal fixed star of Persia. It's a star of kings. It's a star of royalty. It's like you get, yeah, wealth and abundance. But with all of the royal fixed stars, there's a potential for, there's a nemesis, and the nemesis is vengeance. Now, Drake and Kendrick Lamar have been having this rap battle back and forth all these years, but Drake really hit the below the belt and said something about in one of his disses about Kendrick's kid not being his, or about Kendrick being abusive to his girlfriend or wife. And then came Not Like Us, and Kendrick like ripped his face off anyway. But the things he talked about in that song are all very applicable to someone else. And they both, Kendrick and Drake, love to just sue people. They're both sue happy. So I thought that was interesting. There are a lot of similarities between those two in terms of, I'm sure Drake's not as, I don't know. I don't think he's as bad, but or as, I shouldn't say bad. I'll leave it at that. But yeah, you definitely, angles are really personal. So yes, if someone has a world point on an angle, that's like ding, ding, ding. Let's see that. Also, asteroids are important. You can look at the asteroids on world points. I have a couple asteroids on world points that have really shown up in my life. Mhm.
And how about stelliums? Do you consider a planet that's in particular a part of that stellium on the world point, or do you telegraph that to all the other planets that
I would
cluster
like
around?
blend it all in. Yeah. I mean that the planet on the world point kind of draws in the visibility, but it mixes with the planets near it. Do we have anyone?
The United States
Oh
with
yeah.
with
Look at the United States. Oh my God. We've got it's not on a world point, but we've got all of this Cancerian energy. Our sun is on Sirius, one of the brightest star. It's the scorcher or the shining one. And we are a nation that is wealthy. Jupiter and Venus. At some points, we were well liked, Venus. And Mercury, we're known for creating like communications, all sorts of stuff. Like a grower, we grow lots of stuff. At least we have. Yeah. So
and
yes.
Catherine would like to know, how did you predict the thieves would be caught? Was it because of
Oh,
Mars
Mars
retrograde?
retrograde. Retrograde suggests what I see as retrogrades as number one, you're leaving breadcrumbs. So there's a chance that someone could trace your actions back. That's what they suggest. They suggest that there's breadcrumbs. And or what they do as well is they pull the tape up so we can see what's underneath. So if you do something in the shadow period of a retrograde, it may come back where you're looking at it after the fact. Like one of the things, oh, this is a sad story, but I bought all this extra dog food probably when Mercury was in the shadow of Mercury retrograde. Um, and I have Sagittarius in my sixth house for my dog because I've been telling people stock up in case like communications or something goes down for a week or something. Um, it's good to have extra non-perishable and stuff. So I bought my dog food. And then my dog he's got something going on with his kidneys where he's excreting all this sugar. And now he's on this new dog food, which is good for kidneys. And so I've got this 80-pound bag of dog food he's not going to eat. So I bought it during the shadow period. Then during the retrograde, his health issue popped up. And now I got all this dog food that I didn't really need. So the collapse of something that was contemplated. But, these thieves stealing it with the retrogrades suggested to me their trucks were going to be uncovered, as well as the last election happened in the shadow of a retrograde, and I'll just leave that there.
Great. So people really would like to know if there's further resources that you know about the world points and,
That's the
what
problem. There's
they're.
not a book about them or anything that I could find. It's just like, well, you can find like things about the cardinal points, the Aries point in a lot of books. I mean, and in Hellenistic astrology, maybe in the if you want to take the course that is coming up, that sounds so interesting, in the certificate, I'm sure it's talked about a lot, but I'm not aware of any resource that goes into all of the world points.
Yeah, in particular, some people are asking for more information about the 29th degree and how that indicates crisis and decay. So if you could
Yes.
talk
So
to
the
the
29th
aneretic.
degree is called the aneretic degree, and it's a degree of crisis and decay. You can think about it holds all the energy of the sign. And the last few degrees of every sign is in, I think it's the terms of Mars or Saturn. And so Mars and Saturn are the malefics, and the malefics take away from life. They like they have the energy of like breaking things down. And it's like this culmination, things start to break down, and then you go into a new sign and there's something new. So whenever a planet, any planet, changes signs, we can see things like this week, Mercury at 29 degrees of Aquarius. We've been seeing Elon Musk in the United States just firing people willy-nilly as he tries to get rid of people who are investigating, whatever. I don't want to get into it, but they fired a bunch of people who work for nuclear power plants. Mercury goes into zero Pisces, and they're calling people on the phone to come back to work because we need people to protect the nuclear power plants. So it was a mistake. Yes. So 29
Great.
degrees, crisis and decay. He wrote on Twitter, he missed a party a few weeks ago because he was so busy dismantling the United States government, looking for sympathy. He has his South Node on 15 Leo. I shouldn't say that. I can't help myself. I've got Uranus at my IC. I am unleashed, unbothered, unburdened, but hopefully not fired.
I love
Okay.
it. Thank you.
Excuse me. Sorry for my cackling.
The views expressed.
Okay, I wanted to talk about this asteroid. Oh, before I talk about the asteroid, if anyone is in the Sacramento area, I'm giving a workshop on the 23rd of this month about lunar planning. And if you're in the Oakland area, you can come to Orange Theory Fitness. They are having a Black History Month. Don't tell the administration event, and I'm going to be doing just mini readings for people. Okay. But let's talk about this asteroid that was discovered in December, and it's predicted that it could hit the Earth in 2032. So when I heard that, I thought, oh, why don't I go look it up and see what was going on? So in 2020, we had, and I talked about this earlier, we had Jupiter and Saturn meet and these are synodic cycles. Jupiter and Saturn, the social planets, met at 0 Aquarius, seeding a new cycle. And then, especially when we have the squares, opposition, and the closing square, they're events related to this cycle that pop out into the collective. And we already had two now, but 2 of 3 of the Jupiter Saturn squares, where Jupiter's in Gemini for the first 2 and Saturn's in Pisces. And this is the chart set for the United States. And we see that Pluto's on 0 Aquarius. So Pluto is on the degree of the Great Conjunction from 2020. And it's bringing to our conscious attention when a planet comes to that hot degree, that 0 Aquarius is a hot degree for all of us, because there was that great conjunction there. And so Pluto came there, and now we have this understanding that there is this potential thing, both AI, we're talking about, the dangers of AI, on and on and on and on and on. And but also this potential asteroid that could cause a plutonic catastrophe that impacts a lot of people. Aquarius is associated with and Pluto particularly with outer space and stuff like that. According to Rex Bills, he associates Pluto. And yeah, so they're in square and Saturn is angular. And this was on the 24th, and this asteroid was found on the 27th, but Mercury came in and activated this Jupiter-Saturn square on December 26th. And this was like the MAGA civil war was going on, where they were all saying nasty things to each other about H-1B visas, a Mercury and Sagittarius thing, people coming from different countries in order to work cheaply for the tech companies. Yeah. But also bird flu was something that is really important. Thousands of birds are being destroyed. Egg prices are impacted. Neptune at this time is where the moon was back at the conjunction. See how the conjunction of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, the moon, which was the people, it was at 27 Pisces. And now Neptune is there at this square. And then they found this asteroid a few days later. Now we have Jupiter square Saturn, Jupiter in Cancer square Saturn in Aries. And I had said when I looked at that, because Jupiter is exalted and Saturn's in fall, June 15th, where they're in square. And Saturn's also conjunct Neptune at that time. But I said that looks like how the mighty have fallen. And look at the United States in 3 weeks. Where will we be in June? But I think hopefully a better situation, because Jupiter's exalted there. But anyway, we have 5 oppositions of Jupiter and Saturn in 2029 through 31. And yeah, and in Scorpio and Sagittarius, this could be Scorpio, like all this researching and stuff. I mean, hopefully this will be all taken care of. But the new moon before the asteroid hits there's only like a 2% chance it could hit. So, I mean, we might not even be talking about this anymore. It may, be diverted for some reason. But what if we have to go out there in outer space and do something? But anyway, Jupiter, this will be the Jupiter return of of the Great Conjunction. Jupiter will be back at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And we'll also be having a Saturn-Uranus conjunction in Gemini that's happening June before them, where they're quincunx Jupiter in Capricorn. How do we use information to break apart the rock if it's is this something where it's becoming more and more of a crisis? Yeah, in the summer where we got to figure out how to do it. Yeah. And the new moon is at 11 Sagittarius, conjunct the US ascendant. So is this asteroid going to hit somewhere in the US? We see Uranus on a world point of 0 Cancer. This outer space object is a threat to security, potentially, squaring the midheaven and IC of the country. And Chiron's in Taurus, the south nodes in Aries. Are we thinking about our survival? Mars is in detriment. And will this asteroid wound or heal the Earth? This could be a great propaganda tool to keep people all scared. But then when it's supposed to hit December 22nd, the sun is on a world point of 0 Capricorn, the spotlight on this big rock, on the governments and the businesses trying to blow it out of space. The moon is in Virgo. The people are analytical problem solvers. And Mercury and Sagittarius. Are we having a celebration worldwide about how we've destroyed this asteroid? And Venus, Jupiter, Pluto, and Aquarius can be 11th house. We're going to be in this grand new world before we get there where people are getting along better. And we all work together scientifically, all the greatest minds, the most powerful people, and to figure out how to do it. And Mars in Scorpio, trying Saturn and Cancer. Yeah, the strategy was to say a town in ruin was, I say, successful with Mars and Scorpio. And then North Node in Libra, as opposed to what we dealt with for the last year and a half, the South Node in Libra, where it was so hard to get along. Now we are collaborating. There's diplomacy and win-win solutions abound. And we saved the Earth. Scientists saved the Earth from the asteroid. And a female scientist leads the way. How about that? Certain people can put that in their pipe and smoke it. Okay. I also have this calendar. Tiffany Herlick is a brilliant astrologer who I collaborate with. She's created this, and I'm an affiliate. It's wonderful. It puts all the transits, the moon cycles on your calendar with a rich plethora of information. And then this is how you can find me. Okay, I'm on all the things.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Celeste. We have a few more questions.
Oh, great.
Anita wonders if you look at world points and progress charts and solar returns as well.
You know, they do jump out at me sometimes. I don't belabor it as I don't go as deeply, but definitely when you have a planet in a progress chart going to 29 degrees or 0 degrees, definitely look at it regardless of the sign. And it's something I might take note of, and that would be a great thing to like use as a tester to see if it shows up. I haven't done enough research to say yes or no in progressed or solar return. But astrology is observational. So, hey, if you notice something like that, you could give a Kepler webinar on it, potentially.
And the perennial favorite, what house system do you use?
Placidus.
And someone asked about the public's blind spot. I think you referred to that earlier in the presentation.
Oh, I was talking about I mean, it was just a small point, and it wasn't a tight quincunx, but with the United States, that was in the United States chart where I was talking about 9/11. And okay, It's the metonic cycle, right? For
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't think of the word metonic at the beginning. The metonic cycle is a cycle where for 75 or 96 years, you'll have an eclipse at the same exact degree. So hitting your natal chart in the same place, but the rest of the planets will be different places. So the eclipse in the summer at zero Cancer in 2001 and 2020 were both the same metonic cycle. So apologies, I can't believe I couldn't remember the word because I'm eclipse. The moon is my specialty, but it fell out of my head. Okay, so zero Cancer. I was just pointing out that like one of the things about 9/11, these people were like practicing taking off, but not needing to know how to land and at different airfields, and people were calling to the government, and the government was ignoring them, saying, "Hey, something's going on." But anyway, it was almost like because quincunxes are 150-degree aspects. And a quincunx, 150 degrees is literally the blind spot of the human eye. So with quincunxes, there's something like you can't see. So I was just making the point that, these people came and attacked the country and they were able to do it unseen. I wouldn't, it's just, it's in our Cancer is in our blind spot because we're a Sagittarius rising, and Cancer and Taurus are quincunx Sagittarius. Does that make sense, Mary?
Yes. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Yes. Absolutely. Thank you. Your mind is still trapped. You remembered exactly where to go.
Oh, the Cancer rising.
Trudy asks, and because we're going to have the Mercury at 0 degrees Aries for the upcoming solar eclipse, she wonders if that'll affect global markets because Mercury rules trade.
Yes, that must be Trudy Carroll. Hi, Trudy. Yes, I think so. I mean, pins and needles about the economy. I mean, economy and markets like stability. All of this crazy trade war stuff, because on March 1st, the Venus goes retrograde and then Mercury goes retrograde. So this 9 degrees of Aries, oh, let me show you this. Apologies, we've gone a little over. I was worried, oh, am I going to have enough to talk about? And as per usual, Tangent Central. Okay, so this is the United States chart on the inside. And this is the eclipse, and it's opposite the Saturn of the United States chart. So, and then Mercury and Venus are going to station right around this same point. So I think there's definitely a story potentially about markets is a yes. I guess I could have just said yes. But look at this. And Mars direct is on Mercury and Cancer. So this to me, because Mercury trades. So this to me is like there could be something. What are these impulsive decisions or actions causes another market hiccup? I mean, we had the deep sink market hiccup where that Chinese AI thing took the US by surprise. And what else could come out of the retrogrades where information is revealed that wasn't formally known that impacts trade? Yeah. And as companies start losing money because other countries are boycotting the products, that's going to impact markets. And, ooh, is there some kind of military mishap? I'm worried about a false flag with Mars and Cancer. I shouldn't say that, huh?
It's okay. That's what we're here for, Celeste.
Just can't stay out of trouble. I just can't.
It's your delivery of the doom, though, that we appreciate so much. It's with a smile.
A smile and a laugh. It's terrifying for me. So yeah. But yeah,
Well,
I'm concerned about the water. Saturn's in Pisces, troubled waters. And the
mhm.
Neptune and Saturn getting closer and closer. The North nodes conjunct the North nodes conjunct Neptune. And what happened the last time, and we talked about this in transit talk, and Trudy like helped walk us through it, was the panic of 1857, I think it was. Pardon me if I don't get the year right, where a ship of gold sunk. People flipped out about the money, and it like really caused this huge money problem, financial market crash that took into after the Civil War, I believe, to recover from. So yeah, 1857, I think is right. So yeah, people aren't, you know what? Since the uh, full moon in November, right after the election, when all of these cabinet members started to be announced, like this Pete Hegseth and blah blah blah. That full moon was in Taurus conjunct Uranus. People are getting more and more increasingly nervous. And then in with that Jupiter Saturn square and Mercury activating it, the MAGA civil war where these people were cursing at each other, fighting, all of this, that was really unnerving. Especially even Elon Musk, who's apparently a co-president, is like fighting with these people. And then we've got all of this upheaval and Mars retrograde in Cancer. People are sick to their stomachs. There's this unease where people are likely to act out of emotion. Like Trump said something about Elon's finding out that we may not owe as much as we think we owe. And there was some articles about, are we going to default on our bonds? And I have like savings and bonds, and I started flipping out and looking at Fidelity. I called Fidelity. I was thinking about selling all my bonds. I was like, are they going to just, I mean, this is the kind of thing people are experiencing internally. And it's not just me. I'm sure CEOs of
Yeah.
companies are like,
Mhm.
what the hell is going on? So
Profound destabilization. Yeah.
people are feeling this internal emotional concerns and fears for their security. And when people act out of these ways, they're more likely to act in a way that's not in their best interest. And maybe they just decide to sell their portfolio, and like then other people, then it starts a run for the door. So yeah, that was a
Yeah.
long way
Well,
to say.
and Doge withdrawing $80 million from the bank accounts of New York City. I mean, that clearly already dispersed funds. That'll put people into a panic. That screams bank run to me. If people think that
If the bank's
dispersed
not
funds
safe
can be
and the government can
withdrawn.
just take your money, absolutely. If the government starts taking people's money out of accounts that they've already given, oh my God, like farmers already are furious. They got under Biden's infrastructure plan, they got all this money in order to invest in their farms. And now Doge has told them it's canceled. And so people made commitments that they can't honor, and the government's not honoring it. So that's causing a lot of chaos.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Very destabilizing.
this is the Pluto return of the United States. Yeah. It's like
It
the
doesn't feel
Pluto's
good.
returning. It
Who let
doesn't
the
feel
doge
nice.
out?
Yeah, it doesn't feel nice, but we're going to get through it.
Well, thank you, Celeste. This has been so informative as always. I appreciate your insight. And thank you, Lori, for popping everything in the chat and moderating. This has been a great gathering. And thank you, everyone who attended. You have such fascinating things to say in
Yes,
the
I'm looking
questions
at
and the
Diane
comments.
about the next eclipse. Someone was telling me it's a worm moon, which was known in ancient Mesopotamia for taking out a king. So just put that in your pipe and smoke it, Diane. Figuratively or literally, we'll see what happens.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll be
Thank
back.
you.
Stay tuned. Same bat channel.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you at the next webinar.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Mary. This is what
Yeah,
is
love the
wrong? You know what it
hearts.
is? The moon is conjunct my Uranus. Can't help myself.
I think now's the time. We'll wait till everything moves into Aries and there's no holding back then.
Oh my goodness, I'm gonna be in trouble with my Aries moon. What can I do? What can
Okay.
I say?
Bye, everyone.